Winning Blueprint presents.
Draft Zone.
Welcome to the Draft Zone. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. This is the 2013 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. What we aim to do with this program is look at the 2013 NFL Draft of every single team in the National Football League, break down their draft, look at each and every selection made, give it a score using our baseball grading scale, single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series, as we can never tell if these players are going to pan out or not in the National Football League, and we can't tell if a team reached for a player or not. If it's your guy, get your guy when you feel you need to get your guy. You can't tell if another team feels like that player is worthy of a first-round selection or not, and whether another team feels like a player is worth a first or a second-round selection or not makes no difference to another football team. If that's your guy and you have a first-round grade on him, take him. So there will be no strikeouts here in the Draft Wrap-Up Series. Now, we'll be talking about the Chicago Bears today, looking at their draft individually, breaking down each and every single pick, giving them a grade, getting scores for each and every single pick, adding them together, getting an aggregate score for the Chicago Bears draft as a whole, and then we'll move on from there. So, look, without any further ado, I've got the draft board behind me. As we all know, handy dandy pointer no longer with us. Next man up, magic stick ready. Let's get to the board and break down the Chicago Bears 2013 NFL Draft. So as you look at this board here with the Chicago Bears, you look at the needs. We know linebacker is a huge need for the Chicago Bears. They did address this position via free agency. They got James Anderson from the Carolina Panthers. They got DJ Williams from the Denver Broncos. So they did address it, but look, those guys are aging veterans. They need some young exuberance at the linebacker position, some talented guys to go along with a guy that seems to be ageless in Lance Briggs. And look, there's no more Brian Urlacher. For the first time in 13 seasons, the Chicago Bears will go into battle without their unquestioned leader, Brian Urlacher, at the linebacker position. So there's definitely some question marks here at the linebacker position. Offensive line has always been an issue for the Chicago Bears. Ever since they've gotten Jay Cutler, offensive line has been an issue. And it continues to be an issue. And so they need to continue to address this. They did address this in free agency. Again, Bears trying to make some moves. They went out and got Jermon Bushrod to man up that left side of the offensive line at left tackle. Maybe, just maybe, that fixes two positions. Maybe Jamarcus Webb isn't that bad of a right tackle. Maybe he wasn't a left tackle. Maybe the right side will be a little bit better for him. Maybe you fixed two positions by fixing one. But in the event that that's not the case, and even if it is, you still need more depth along that offensive line. That's an issue for the Bears. Defensive line, Bears always need more talent on the defensive line. That could go for every team in the National Football League. Israel Adonijah has not been re-signed. I don't know if he'll be back or not, but that's 7 sacks right there that you need to replace on your defensive line from a season ago. So you can always use more defensive line help. I think that's an area the Bears could look to upgrade their football team as well. And cornerback. Even though I like what the Bears have at cornerback, it seems like Peanut Tillman doesn't age. He's still playing at the same level that we saw him playing as a rookie when he was going up and taking jump balls from Randy Moss. He's still playing at that level. He's still punching the football out. That's the most uncanny ability in the league to punch the football out I've ever seen in my life. He comes up, balls his fist up, And he does not miss, and if he hits it, it's coming out. And he still plays a really good corner position across from him, a very diminutive corner, yet Tim Jennings played really well, led the NFL with interceptions, and so you still got really good cornerbacks out there, but still, you need more depth. You need more guys that you can rely on. And again, those guys aren't spring chickens. You could use some young guys to come in and learn from the veterans that you already have on this roster who have established themselves as really good corners in this league. So look at the draft board round, pick, players, position, school, and we look at this Chicago Bears draft. And this is the first one under the direction of the new head coach, Mark Tresman. You still have Phil Emery back here manning up your draft as the general manager. So let's see what the Bears were able to accomplish in this draft. You start with the first round, 20th overall selection, offensive guard out of Oregon, Kyle Long. Now, when this pick was made, I'm not going to lie to you, I was floored, flabbergasted. I had no idea what the Chicago Bears were doing. There was a lot of value sitting there at 20 for a team with a defensive line need. Offensive line need was, look, it was a prevalent need. You definitely could use some offensive line help. But at the time, the offensive line position had been ravished. Okay? The cupboard was basically empty at this point in the first round. At least 4 tackles had been taken. Justin Pugh had just came off the board right in front of you. The guard position was non-existent. Both guards had already been taken off the board. So I didn't think that in the first round another offensive lineman would be selected. Turns out 2 here with the Bears and 1 later on with the Cowboys in a center. And so I just really didn't see this one coming. This was one of the first, okay, whoa, out of left field type of picks for me. And there were some that I didn't agree with up until this point, but this was the first one where I had that true, unadulterated Scooby-Doo moment when I just, because I had no idea what the Bears were doing here. I look at Kyle Long, and Mike Mayock, he tried to convince me and sell me on this pick. I wasn't having it. I wasn't a big fan of this selection. I felt like at 20, you could have gotten yourself Alec Ogletree. You could have gotten yourself some linemen that kind of fell in the draft, like Sharif Floyd. I just thought there was more value here than a guy like Kyle Long. But then I looked at it in the scheme of what the Bears are trying to do. And I had to sell myself on the pick because I didn't believe in this pick initially. I still really am not on board totally, but I see the logic from the other side of the fence. I was just looking at it from my personal perspective as a fan, and I'm not a fan of the Bears, but I look at this pick and I say, what are you doing? Then I had to take a step back and analyze it from the Bears' point of view. Here's a guy that has that lineage. He's a Long, Howie Long, dad, Hall of Famer, very athletic, freakishly athletic, big, strong man that could get to the quarterback. Brother, Chris Long, big, physical, long defensive end that seems to have the niche of getting to the quarterback in the National Football League, much like his father, a guy that has proven to be a double-digit sack getter in this league and looks like he has a very bright future ahead of him. So he looks like a guy that fits right in with the rest of them. And if you ask either one of them, he's the better athlete of the family. He's the best athlete that they have in that lineage. And so from that point of view and perspective, you say, okay, what else is there to like? Tell me more. Why should I feel more comfortable about this pick? We're talking 6'6", 315 specimen. So right there, everything you look for in an offensive lineman is right here in Kyle Long. 6'6", long arms, very lean, athletic guy. Used to play defensive end, much in the mold of his father and brother, but was switched over to the offensive side of the football, and I thought that was a great move because I think he's more suited to be an offensive lineman than he is a defensive lineman. But he was drafted by the Chicago White Sox to play baseball, had the option of playing, being a pitcher, being a first baseman. He opted to go to college to play baseball at Florida State. Didn't like it too much. Ended up getting out of there. Got into a little bit of trouble. Had to go to a JUCO for a couple of years. Then transferred to Oregon and played really well for the Oregon Ducks at the guard position. But his athleticism, great feet, can move, very athletic again, much like his father and brother. Very athletic, can move, can get to that second level, has no trouble pulling and getting out to that next level and really doing some damage down the field and creating some big gaping holes for a running back like Matt Forte or Michael Bush. And so I think this is a solid selection. He has everything you look for in an offensive lineman. And we'll talk about this a little bit later too, but what Kyle Long brings to the table and why this pick is probably justified, and I said the same thing about Justin Pugh, is because there's positional versatility here. And anytime you get that in an offensive lineman, you feel really good about yourself. Here's a guy that is coming into the league as a guard, but at 6'6", 315, long arms, very athletic, he's still raw. Keep in mind, here's a baseball player. Here's a guy that used to play on the defensive side of football. He hasn't been playing offensive line that long, so he's still raw, still has a lot to learn. But all the intangibles are here for this guy to play left tackle, left guard, right guard. So he gives you some versatility along this offensive line that you probably currently don't have on your football team. Here's a guy that can play 4 out of the 5 positions on your offensive line and probably play them extremely well. And so if he's coached up down the line, I think this is a guy you can kick outside. Possibly move over to left tackle if you like. But I think you going out and getting Jermon Bushrod means that you're looking at Kyle Long right now. It's probably a right tackle, maybe even a guard for the time being. But the potential for him to move is there. And so that's always something that intrigues coaches around the National Football League, is a guy that can do multiple things and play multiple positions on your football team. Kyle Long can do that for you. So I kind of convinced myself to a certain extent that this was an okay pick. I'm still not in love with the pick. Hence, in the first round, 20th overall selection, guard out of Oregon, Kyle Long is a triple for me. Because I had to do a lot of convincing of myself to make this pick make sense to me. But it's a good selection. I think this guy has all the talent necessary to be a really good offensive lineman. And as we all know, the Chicago Bears can use as many good offensive linemen as they can get their hands on. And I think Kyle Long is someone that over the next couple of years could develop into a really good offensive lineman for the Chicago Bears. The only reason why I'm a little bit, and I'll move on after this because I've spent enough time on this already, but the only reason I wasn't sold on the pick after I did my homework on it was because I still had reservations, because you're in win now mode if you're in Chicago. The Bears are in win now mode. Jay Cutler isn't getting any younger. You've got a new head coach. Matt Forte, there's a lot of tread that's worn down off of those tires. And so you got to start winning now. Brandon Marshall isn't getting any younger. Okay? The core of your football team is starting to diminish right in front of your eyes, especially on the defensive side of football. Urlacher, now gone. Lance Briggs, a year older. So is Peanut Tillman. So is Julius Peppers. Let's not forget about Pep. Pep is getting up there in age as well. And so you want to win now. You need to win now. I don't know if this guy is a win now type of selection. Of course, he can play guard right now. But if you're drafting this guy at 20, I'm thinking you want to play him at tackle. But we'll see. Look, any help on your offensive line, and remember Lance Lewis, your guard from a season ago that got injured toward the end of the season, which was probably your best offensive guard on your football team, no longer there. So you put a guy like Kyle Long in there and you just keep it moving. You need this offensive line to work like a well-oiled machine. And I guess Kyle Long is a guy that you feel like can help you do exactly that. So we move on to the second round. 50th overall selection, linebacker out of Florida, Jonathan Bostic. 6'1", 243 pounds. And here's a guy that I look at, and he runs around the field. is everything you look for in a replacement for Brian Urlacher. Now, of course, he's not 6'4" like Brian Urlacher is. And look, we're not making him out to be the exact replacement of Brian Urlacher. But he is a leader on the football field. He's a guy that gets everyone lined up where they're supposed to be. And he's a winner. I like Jon Bostic a lot. He's a guy that comes in, is very stout at the point of attack, can play the run, can also get back into pass coverage, which I think is a great fit in what Chicago likes to do defensively. And so, schematically, I think Jon Bostic is a great fit in Chicago. He comes in, can do a little bit of everything. He's not great at one thing, but he does everything extremely well. Can get in there, mix it up in the run game, can get back into pass coverage, pick some passes off. He was very adept at that at Florida. So Jon Bostic is a solid selection for the Chicago Bears in the second round. And as we know, the Bears are making that transition on defense. Two of your linebackers from a season ago who started for you no longer on the roster. You go out and get a couple of aging veterans to fill that void for you. But in this draft, you'll find that the Bears aren't satisfied with what they went out and got in free agency. They want some young guys that can come in and compete to start right away. Here's one in Jonathan Bostic that will do exactly that. I like this selection. I think he's a great fit for what the Bears want to do on the defensive side of the football. Is he a true sideline-to-sideline guy? Probably not. But when you put this guy in a short area, when you put this guy in a small area and tell him, hey, defend this, he can do it. Now, don't ask this guy to cover a back out of the backfield on a wheel route. That's not his specialty. But if you ask this guy, hey, go and cover the flats, he can do that. If you ask this guy, hey, plug up the middle of the field, don't allow the running back to come up the A-gap, he can do that. You ask this guy to sniff out a screen, he can do that. Anything that's within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, Jon Bostic is your man. You get him any further back than that, now you're kind of getting into that danger zone. But I like this selection. In the second round, 50th overall selection, linebacker out of Florida, Jonathan Bostic, for me, is another triple for the Chicago Bears. Really good pick. I think he fits what the Chicago Bears are trying to do defensively on this football team. So now let's go to the needs board and see what the Bears have been able to accomplish. Your first round selection, Kyle Long, offensive lineman. He's a guard. That takes care of one need. You look at your second round selection, linebacker Jonathan Bostic out of Florida. That takes care of another need. And so now we move on to the fourth round. Pick 117, linebacker out of Rutgers, Kasim Greene. I absolutely love this pick. Love it. You got extreme. And when I say extreme, I'm talking about to the max value out of this pick. We're talking about another 6'1" linebacker. Don't care. 245, 250 pounds. You know who he reminds me of? Last year, in the second round, if I'm not mistaken, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers selected a linebacker by the name of Levante David. And Mike Mayock said, hey, this is one of my favorite guys. He's always around the football. That's how I feel about Kasim Greene. Because Kasim Greene is always around the football. Wherever the football is, that's where you'll find Kasim Greene. And he's a monster, okay? Hard hat, lunch pail. He opens it up, and it's nothing but boom. And there's nothing but a lot of ferocity and tenacity. I just love his game because it doesn't matter whatever it is. Off tackle, dive, screen, draw, hitch, wide receiver screen. He's there. You can't do anything without this guy being in the mix. And so I absolutely love this pick. He's a high volume tackler. So you put him in the game and you start him, you're going to get 100 plus tackles on the season because he's going to be around the football. And I think he's a guy that has an immediate impact on your defense. You stick him in at the strong side linebacker position, allow him to work. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears tried to put him in the middle of their defense. But I think that's what they drafted John Bostic to do, honestly. Be the quarterback of this defense, get guys in the right position, be a leader. And I think he has a little bit better coverage skills than Kasim Greene does. But I don't care. Put him on the strong side and watch this guy work. Watch this guy be a tackling machine for you. Get in the backfield, create tackles for loss, disrupt plays. I love this pick. In the 4th round, pick 117, linebacker out of Rutgers. Kasim Greene for me is a home run. You can put it on the board, Bears. Love it. Absolutely love it. So I think you got a steal here in the 4th round. 117th overall selection, linebacker out of Rutgers, Kasim Greene. Absolutely feel like this guy fits the prototypical Chicago Bear linebacker. Both of these two backers that you got in the 4th and 2nd round, to me, fit what a Chicago Bears linebacker should look like. I think they fit, and I think Greene more so than Bostic fits what a Chicago Bears linebacker embodies. It is supposed to look like. So we move on to the 5th round, 163rd pick. This is from the Atlanta Falcons, offensive tackle out of Louisiana Tech, Jordan Mills. Much like Kyle Long, and remember I told you earlier in this segment that we were going to come back to this. Here's a guy that, if this were baseball, he would be known as a utility guy. He'd be a utility man. But because this is football, we say that Jordan Mills provides positional depth and versatility. He's a positional versatility guy. Big, long tackle at Louisiana Tech, played really well. 6'5", about 320. Really athletic guy. A little slow off the ball, which allows him to get beat a lot of times. But he has a great first step. So when he does get off the ball correctly, when he's supposed to, when he fires off correctly, hard to beat this guy because he has a great first step. Sells play action fake really well. Does all the little things really well. But because he does not get off the ball as aggressive as he should, most times he can get a little grabby. He's a guy that oftentimes finds his hands outside the pads instead of here. They're here, which is going to get you plenty of holding calls in the National Football League. However, here's a guy that you can hide inside. Again, positional versatility. He gives you depth at multiple positions. He can play left or right tackle. He can play left or right guard. Anytime you get swing tackles and guards on your football team, or you get a guy, in the case of Jordan Mills, that can play 3 or 4 different positions, normally there's a place on the roster for you. And so, if nothing else, Jordan Mills comes in and gives you that versatility and that depth that you're looking for in one guy. Someone that can play multiple positions and be very adept at it and help you along your offensive line. I think Jordan Mills would do that for you. He's got some deficiencies, some things he needs to tighten up. But in the 5th round at 163, I think you got a solid player in Jordan Mills. It's a double for me for the offensive tackle out of Louisiana Tech. Let's look at the needs board again. You get Kasim Greene, another linebacker. So we'll put another line through the linebacker position. You also get another offensive lineman, this time in the form of Jordan Mills. So Bears really going heavy on the linebacker and offensive line positions. We've had 4 selections. We had 2 of each, 2 linebackers, 2 offensive linemen. We move on to the 6th round, pick 188, linebacker out of Georgia, Cornelius Washington. Here is a big physical man. Let's get physical. We're talking about 6'4", 260, and I honestly think that this guy could get to about 270 and play defensive end. And honestly, that's what I see him doing in the National Football League because he's stiff to me. I can't see him making the transition cleanly to linebacker at the next level. I don't think he's athletic enough to play linebacker in this league, especially in a 4-3 defense, which is what the Bears employ. I think he has to go to defensive end. Here's a guy that you cut loose and just tell him, hey, go after the quarterback. Don't worry about anything else. Go after the quarterback. At 6'4", 265, and running a 4.5 40 and bench pressing 2 1/4 over 30 times, this guy's an animal. So you get him to put on another 10 pounds or so, and you just stick him on the defensive line and say, hey, go after the quarterback. Much like Henry Melton, you just get this guy and turn him loose on the defensive line. You create an animal here in Cornelius Washington, and I think that's what the Bears have in mind. I can't see this guy making the transition to linebacker in the National Football League. I don't think he's fluid enough as an athlete out in space. But you put him on the defensive line and you turn this guy loose, I think you have a potential animal on your hands in Cornelius Washington. He's athletic in terms of in small spaces. You put him out in space and tell him to cover. He can't do it. But you put him on the defensive line, you stunt him, you get him crashing down, you allow him to use that agility. I just told you he's a 4.5 40 guy, so there is explosion here. You get this guy moving. Look out. I like this pick a lot because Cornelius Washington has things you can't teach. He's 6'4", has some long arms, very physical, very strong. You can teach strength, but not this kind of strength. This is that country cornbread wood chopping strength right here. Okay? You look at him, you're like, damn, does he have any fat on him? He's a big man. Okay? So I like Cornelius Washington a lot. I think he brings a lot to the table if the Bears use him in the right capacity. And I think if he's allowed to get after the quarterback, and if they just allow this guy to stick his hand in the dirt, I think the Bears have a triple on their hands in the form of the linebacker out of Georgia in the 6th round, Cornelius Washington. I like it a lot. I think if they make the conversion to defensive end for this guy, sky's the limit for what Cornelius Washington can bring to the table for the Chicago Bears. So we finish up this draft in the 7th round, 236th overall selection, again from the Atlanta Falcons, wide receiver out of Washington State, Marquis Wilson. Now, interesting prospect here. We're talking about 6'3", buck 95, 4.5 40, very polished receiver. Set all kinds of records at Washington State in catches, yards per catch, yada, yada, yada. This guy, high production, high volume guy at Washington State. But, of course, there's a but. We're in the 7th round. If he was that good and there were no red flags, we wouldn't be talking about this guy in the 7th round. So, but he was dismissed from Washington State's football team because of conduct detrimental to the team. Translation, he walked out of a conditioning drill and left. I don't want to play anymore. He said that he was belittled by the coaching staff. They called him names. They made him feel bad. Now, Mike Leach is the coach. So, even though you don't walk out, there's probably some truth to that because Mike Leach is an absolute head case as a head coach. So, I can believe somewhat of what Marquis Wilson is saying. However, that doesn't justify his actions. Thus, there were some red flags here with Marquis Wilson. But put the tape on for this guy, and you can't deny that this guy has what it takes to get it done at the next level. Now, there are deficiencies in his game. Let's start with those before we go on to all the things that he can bring to the table for the Chicago Bears. First things first. This guy's 6'3". If you're 6'3", you should not be sub 200 pounds. So that should be a red flag to you in itself when I tell you he's 6'3", buck 95. I shouldn't be saying buck anything. It should be 2 something. Well, he's a buck 95, which means he's light in the trunks. Translation, He doesn't get off the line of scrimmage well. If there's a physical corner in front of him that loves to put their hands on a receiver, a la Darrelle Revis, a la one of the Seattle Seahawks corners, this guy isn't getting off of the line of scrimmage. He has trouble getting off of the line of scrimmage when pressed by physical corners. So that's problem number one. Number two, his hands aren't as strong as you would like them to be. When he gets into some trouble, when there's a lot of traffic around and guys swiping at the football, swiping at his wrist, he's not a guy that's strong enough with the football to just snatch it out of the air and hold on to it in traffic, which causes some drops sometimes. Also, at 6'3", you want guys to be able to win that 50-50 ball. He gets one-on-one coverage on the outside with a 5'11" corner, and this guy can jump. Marquis Wilson can jump with the best of them. So at 6'3", infinite hops, you want this guy to just go up. And we know Jay Cutler does not have a problem lofting it up and giving you a shot at getting the football. So you want Marquis Wilson to be able to go up and snatch it out of the air and make a play for his quarterback. That's not his strong suit. He's not a guy that will go up and battle with a 50-50 ball and come down with it more than 50% of the time. It's literally a 50-50 ball when you throw it up to Marquis Wilson. And a lot of times he won't win those jump balls, especially if that corner times it up right, gets up there, sticks his hand in there. Marquis Wilson isn't going to use that height and that body to shield away the defender and come down with the football. He does not do that very well. So there are deficiencies there. But if you allow this guy a free release off the line of scrimmage, you allow him to get in and out of his breaks. He's one of these guys that's a long strider. At 6'3", 4'5", 40, he eats up a lot of grass very quickly. So we're talking about you've got a 10-yard cushion on this guy. You give him 4 steps, that 10-yard cushion, gone, vanished. So he's one of those guys that gets on you quickly, and if you're not careful, he'll run right by you, and he can make plays once the football gets in his hands. So there's a lot to like about Marquis Wilson. He's got to get in the weight room, and of course, 7 reps of 2 1/4 means this guy is not very strong, not very physical. So that's apparent. So he's got to get strong first and foremost. Mentally, the Bears have to figure out where this guy is. Is he a guy that's a head case, or was this just a case of a situation that was unhealthy for all parties involved at Washington State? He may not have made the right decision, but at the time, he made the decision that he felt like was right for him. Who knows? But you've got a guy that can come in and compete at the receiver position. And if you're the Bears, that's all you can ask for at this time. With Devin Hester no longer being a receiver, Johnny Knox no longer being a receiver on your football team, you could use a guy to step in and kind of help you at the receiver position. You know, push some guys that may have been getting a free pass at the receiver position. Who knows? Right now, you've got Brandon Marshall and a bunch of other guys. I like Earl Bennett. Earl Bennett seems to always be hurt. I like your early round selection last year in Alshon Jeffrey, but he had a lot of lapses in concentration, and so he's got to be better. But I think in year 2, Alshon Jeffrey will be better, and so a guy like Marquis Wilson can come in and kind of help bolster this receiving corps if he makes a team. Again, 7th round selection, nothing is guaranteed to Marquis Wilson, but the talent, it's there. If he works hard, gets in the weight room, puts on another 10 pounds or so, I like Marquis Wilson a lot. And I think the Bears might have gotten themselves a steal in the 7th round in the form of Marquis Wilson, wide receiver out of Washington State. For me, it's a double. Easily could have been a triple, but I have questions. How is this guy mentally? Are the Bears going to be able to get this guy in the weight room and put on those 10 pounds? Are those 10 pounds going to slow him down and make him a little bit slower in and out of his breaks, make him a slower player? Again, everyone can't carry 205, 210 pounds. There's a reason why this guy was a $195, and so maybe adding 10 pounds makes him a different player. I don't know. Those are all questions that I have. Not the strongest player with the ball in his hands, so I have questions. Hence, it's a double for me in the 7th round for the Chicago Bears. So you look at this draft, and let's go to the needs board one final time. I think Cornelius Washington, honestly, is going to be a defensive end. So I'm going to make a line through defensive line for the Bears and say that the only need not met is cornerback. It wasn't a dire need coming into this draft. It was just a position that I thought, hey, if there's value there, why not? And so you look at this draft as a whole: Kyle Long triple, John Bostic triple, Kasim Greene home run, Jordan Mills double, Cornelius Washington triple, Marquis Wilson double. You add all of those up for the Chicago Bears. Surprisingly, it's a triple for the Chicago Bears. Now, it's a very condensed draft. It's only 6 players. But I feel like the Bears did a great job of drafting guys that can help them right away. And I'm all about right now. It's cool to draft players that can help you in 3 or 4 years or 2 years down the road. That's okay too. But when you're a team like the Chicago Bears, Lovie Smith got fired because he wasn't winning now. You don't draft guys that can help you down the road in the first, second, and third round. You draft guys that can help you now. And in this draft, up and down this board, I see guys that can help you now. Now, there are some cases of guys that probably won't play in the 2013 season, and if they do, it'll be sparingly. You know, a guy like Jordan Mills, if he makes the roster, a guy like Cornelius Washington, if he makes the roster, a guy like Marquis Wilson, if he makes the roster, all guys that might see the field, may not see the field, if they make the team. But your first 3 picks, all these guys are contributing in 2013. And I think they can have huge impacts on this football team. And that's what you want if you are the Chicago Bears. So, surprisingly, it's a triple for the Chicago Bears. I thought they did a really good job of maximizing the picks in this draft. Now, did they go overkill at a couple of positions? Sure they did. We're talking about 2 linebackers, 2 offensive linemen. You could argue that it was 3 linebackers because Cornelius Washington was drafted as a linebacker, but I think he's going to make the conversion to defensive end. But was it overkill at a couple of positions? Did they just ignore a lot of other positions on their team? Sure they did. But at the end of the day, the Bears got players that they felt could help their team right away in positions of need for this football team. And so I don't have a problem with it. It's a triple for the Chicago Bears in the 2013 NFL Draft wrap-up.
Draft Zone.